So, like, I'm gonna talk for 10 or 15 minutes, then I'm gonna play Louise, then I'm gonna
Yeah.
talk for
So
5
the
minutes, and I'm
stars are
gonna
your
play
breaks. Okay. Do you want
videos.
water in here?
I have iced tea,
Okay.
so I'm gonna. So basically, I'm gonna have way more, like 50% of it's breaks.
Yeah. That's good though.
Yeah, and it's gonna be
Because it'll help
good.
you think of things that you want to make sure you.
Yeah, and I think like it's gonna make it so much better because it's gonna break it up.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff did that too. Hello, everybody. It's Reed Tracy here, the CEO of Hay House, and I want to welcome you all to this live, and I mean live, so if you hear a few things or see a few things, it's all happening right now. Master class teaching you guys basically the insider tips for being a successful author. That's what we told you it is, but I'm going to add a little something to that. So it's an insider tips for being a successful author and writer. And we're going to talk a lot about that today, like a little bit about your writing, how to get started writing, how to decide what to write, when to write, where to write, all that kind of stuff. We're going to do something a little different. If you've attended any of the other webinars I've done or live online events or all the other things that I've done over time, sometimes I've had guests, but this time I'm going to be playing you some videos from our Hay House Writers workshops that we've done for the last 10 years. And I'm going to play you little selected clips that are going to help us today from a whole bunch of people that hopefully you know. And I'm so excited for it because it's going to help tie everything together as I'm talking to you guys here today. So a little housekeeping as we get started here is that if you look on the right side next to me here talking to you, you should see a list of the other master classes I'm going to be doing in this series. They're going to be a total of 4, so we're doing this one today, then we're going to do 3 more, and you can see the dates for those. And if you attend live, you're going to get a little bit of extra things. You're going to get to ask me some questions. We're going to edit them a little bit when we do the recording. So those of you that are watching the recording, you missed out a little by not being live, but you are getting most of it. So we want you to come live if you can, because I want to interact with you on the questions so that I'm talking about what you want to hear. And also you're going to notice over there that there's a link to a private Facebook group just for you all. It's all just for writers. It's called the Hay House Writers Studio. There's over 7,000 people in the group right now. And it's such a great group. Everyone's so supportive, no matter where you are in the writing process. This master class is really not if you just have an idea and your friends keep saying you should write a book, then this is for you. If you're moving along and you've started writing the book, this is for you. If you've already published a book, this is for you. We're going to help you, all of you, no matter where you are in the journey. There's going to be things that you're going to take away from this master class, each of the 4 classes. We're going to try to tailor it so that we know there's a big cross section of people in this, and hopefully at the end of each one of these you're going to walk away with a tip that you can put into action right then, right there. So that's our goal. And then if you also notice after the Facebook group, the Writer Studio Facebook group, down below that there's a free download for you all, so you should click that, download it, and it's a roadmap to your publishing journey as well. So we're trying to get you covered in all those places. In between the master classes, we're also sharing additional material in the private Facebook group, like when this webinar is over, I have a special surprise for you at the end of this. I'm going to tell you what will be over there in that Facebook group for you guys to start working on today. So we're trying to just keep you engaged, keep things moving along. So that's our goal here today. I'm going to start this whole thing off just telling you a little bit about me, like who am I, why do you want to listen to me? Some of you are part of the Hay House family and you might be getting my weekly newsletter, but some of you, I might be new to you and you just are interested in writing a book and you love the topic. So I'm going to tell a little bit about how I got started in all this. So I've been working here at Hay House for 30 years. So I started in 1988 at Hay House, and now it's 2018, so that's 30 years I've been here. And when I started at Hay House, it was a small company. Louise actually started Hay House in 1987 when she was 60 years old. So any of you out there that are thinking, oh, I might be too old to do this writing, I don't think that you are. Louise has literally started Hay House when she was 60, and she wrote her last book when she was 89. So you have plenty of time to get those books written. I want you to have a series of them by the time you're 89, unless you're 88 right now. Then we just need one by the time you're 89. We want you to really take some time and get that book written. I know many of you have heard from your friends, family members, like, please write the book. I know many of you have different ideas for writing the book. And today we're really going to help you with that, getting those ideas and get the book started. That's our goal for today. So I started in 1988, so Hay House had been around for 1 year. When I started working at Hay House, there wasn't even a self-help section in the bookstore, and now we're the largest self-improvement publisher in the world. So things have changed a lot since then. Now it's one of the fastest growing segments in publishing is self-improvement, and we do all kinds of different things here at Hay House. We're actually starting to publish business books. Hay House Business is starting in January. We do health books, self-improvement books. We do metaphysical books. We do all different kinds of books. So over the years, I've had a lot of different experience. So for the first about 20 years while I was Hay House, I started as the financial director at Hay House. So I was a CPA before I came here. And I really wasn't that familiar with this material, but I always tell everyone that it kind of all rubbed off on me. I got it through osmosis over the years from talking to Louise Hay every day and Wayne Dyer every day. Wayne and I literally talked every day. Louise and I talked probably every other day. So between the two of them, I got all this wisdom. Like I would see myself, my friends would ask a question and I would be saying, well, why don't you try this or why don't you try that? And I'd be thinking, wow, where did you get that? That sounds like Wayne Dyer or Louise Hay or Christiane Northrup or Marianne Williamson or who knows, one of the authors that we have here at Hay House. And pretty soon it started getting embedded in me, and I was doing some of my own quotes and things like that. So it gives you just a little background. And then once I got started, I was actually really involved in acquiring the books for people, deciding which books we're going to publish, helping recruit authors to Hay House for many, many, many years. Up until about 10 or 12 years ago, then we started getting other people that helped me with that, and I'm still involved in bringing those authors in, and I've helped so many authors along the way develop their books, produce their books, help get the message out about their books, and I want to help each and every one of you in the same exact way that I've helped them. About 10 years ago, we started doing the Hay House Writers Workshops, and that's when I started sharing this information. At that time, I'd been here for 20 years and sharing my 20 years of experience with different people. And at the beginning, it was a scary experience because I'm not a natural extrovert that wants to be on stage. Many of our authors that's their favorite thing in the whole world is be on stage, present their material, share their stories. That wasn't the case for me. When I first went and did this first writer's workshop, the people that were there from Hay House, it was on a cruise, were like in the back going, I can't believe he's going to stand up there and talk to anybody. Over the years, I've gotten more comfortable doing the speeches. In fact, like last week, I was in the UK giving a speech in Bristol, a Hay House Writers Workshop weekend. We had an amazing weekend in Bristol. It was fantastic. It was so fun. And then a month or two before that, I was in Australia and Melbourne, Australia, doing the writers workshop, and in a couple weeks I'm going to be in Las Vegas doing it again. So I'm going to share some of those, like all that, the things that we've learned at these writers workshops in this master class with you guys as well. Some of it, I mean, we don't have time for it all. Those are a whole weekend long, and this is going to be like a 90 minutes long. So, but I'm going to give you some highlights and tips. And one of the things I actually forgot to tell you is if you look down below this video, there's a whole comment section. And this is my favorite part of the whole thing, is reading like the name of your book, the topic of your book, where you're from in the world or in the United States or North America, wherever you're from. I love to see where you're from. I love to see what you're working on. And then most importantly, I love to see any questions that you want me to answer during this webinar, because it is an interactive live webinar. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing it live, is so I can get the questions answered that really are going to help you take the next step right now in your writing journey. So please go down below, input a whole bunch of questions. Tell me what you want to learn. Tell me the name of your book. Tell me what I need to know. So the topics that you're talking about, the area of your interest, what I should be addressing to really make a difference. Let me know how you like the different segments as we're going through, as I play some of the videos, as I give you comments about the videos. Just please tell us anything that's going to be helpful to keep improving this and to help you on your writing journey. So please take your time, write some comments, let us know everything about what you think about what we're doing here today. So like I said, I started at Hay House 30 years ago, but Louise actually started her writing journey even before I had started working here at Hay House, before there even was Hay House. Louise started by self-publishing her first book, which was called Metaphysical Causes of Disease, or Metaphysical Causation is actually what the name of it, of the first book was. And then later that turned into Heal Your Body. And then she wrote a book called You Can Heal Your Life. And Louise used to attend all our Hay House writers workshops. She used to come to them, and she would sit in the front row because she couldn't believe I was up there telling people, talking to people. And like literally for the first 3-4 years of the writers workshop, I could count on Louise sitting in the front row. A little intimidating, being the super amazing person that she was, but she would even speak at a few of the writers workshops and give her wisdom. In a few minutes I'm going to play a video that she of her telling her own story. So I usually tell her whole story, but why not have her tell the story herself? It's so inspiring just hearing her speak. There's a few things I want to talk about before I play that video, and one is I want to give you a reminder that I give at the beginning of every writer's workshop, and that is that if you're planning to do a website around your work, around your book world, like as you get started and become a writer, and you're planning to do a website around that, I always recommend that you don't do the website in the name of the book that you're writing, but instead do the website in your own name. Now, I know some of you like have a name that's common, so you might not be able to do .com, but you might do some other .net or something like that. I know one of our authors, John Edward, he has that issue. When he tried to get .com, there was already someone there, so his is johnedward.net. Now there's all kinds of dots you can get, but it's good to do because especially if you're doing a nonfiction book, then people are going to look for your name, and especially if you plan to do more than one book. Because if you brand your whole website around the name of your first book, and then the next book has a different name, you're going to have 2, 3, 4 websites. It's better just to use your name, and then you can use tabs on your website for the different books. So that's a tip that's usually helpful and saves lots and lots of money of people wasting their money building book-oriented websites that nobody really comes to. Because if they see you or hear you talking about your book, they're going to look for your name. Now, there are exceptions when you have a business. If you're doing certain business books that have a business name, you might want to consider that. But even that, if the business is strongly revolving around you and your name, a lot of times it's better to use your name. And I'm not going to get into whole stories about that right now. I might share that in a future video of people that have changed it and the results it's had. Let's just say that people have improved their business dramatically by switching from a business name that wasn't that well known or a book name that wasn't that well known name into using their name themselves. And another thing that I want to bring up is that it's important as you're thinking about your first or second book, whatever you happen to be doing, is that it's important that you consider a niche area that you really want to get started in. Like, it's really great if you have like a specific area that you're trying to like be an expert in. And one of the ways that you become an expert in an area is by writing your own book. Like as soon as the book's published, then they're going, oh wow, he must know a lot or she must know a lot because they actually wrote their whole book on the subjects. And even in the age of self-publishing, even if you self-publish your book, we're going to talk all about this in the third master class. But even if you self-publish your book, it still has a lot of authority that you've taken the time and gotten that book written. So it can make you an expert in this niche area, and it's much better to aim in a niche area than it is to aim in a super big, broad area. Like it's way easier to do a book about clearing clutter than it is to do a book about happiness, because you're aiming for specific people that have clutter in their life. Whereas you might say everybody is worried about being happier, but it's much harder to reach that audience than it is to say anyone interested in clutter, listen to my ideas, listen to the things that I have going on. So those are some general little tips, and I'm going to actually tell you a few stories of people that have used that idea as we go through this. But let's go back to the idea of listening to Louise Hay explain to her how she got started in the publishing world. So we're going to play her video for you right now, and then I'll be back to talk about what she has and move you along in this master class.
How many of you here have written a book already? Okay, published books? Okay, great. How many are in the process of writing a book? Okay, how many people are scared to death of writing a book? Oh, it's wonderful. When I first started, in my first little book that I wrote, I didn't even know I was writing a book. And I had no idea that this was going to happen, and it didn't mean anything to me, and it was a fluke. Many, many things on my spiritual pathway have been flukes. It's like life just brings in this little incident, and I think, oh, okay, I'll do that. And then the next thing I know, it's 4 years later, and that little incident has grown and grown and become a magnet. I remember when I was first learning the stuff. I went to a lecture quite by a fluke. A friend of mine invited me, said, I've heard that there's a very good lecture at such and such a place, but I don't want to go by myself. Would you go with me? And I said, okay. So I went there to meet him. He didn't show up, and there I was. And I heard someone say, if you're willing to change your thinking, you can change your life. And I went, oh, really? Really? I remember thinking, really? Really? And then the thing was to learn how to do that. But that little penny dropping was a big deal. So I began my studies And I studied this and I studied that. And I started to, among all the other things I was learning things about how your thoughts influence your health and how diseases could have a thought pattern behind them that contributes to the problem you're having. And so I made a list of them because I was starting to work with some people at that time and I wanted to be able to find it easily. So I alphabetized the list and I showed it to a friend of mine and she said, "Oh, Louise, what a wonderful idea. Why don't you make a pamphlet out of it?" And I went, "Oh." I did that in the early days. I did that a lot. "Oh." I would never have thought of that. So I looked at it again, and what I did was I put 2 paragraphs in the front of the list and 2 paragraphs at the back of the list. And I printed up a little pamphlet. And there I had book number 1. But I didn't know it. And I remember going to my teacher and proudly showing him this little booklet. And I said, "You know what I've done?" And he said, "Oh, Louise, isn't that sweet? How many did you have made? 50? And I said, "No, 5,000. Well, I discovered that if you print, the more you print, the cheaper the object gets. And it turned out that, 5,000 was really not a bad price at all. So then he looked at me and he said, "Oh, you're crazy. You'll never sell this thing." But 2 years later, I had sold the last of the 5,000. And life just took care of it. From the moment I've set my foot on the spiritual pathway, life has taken care of me and said, "You will do this, you will do this, you will do this, step by step." And I never thought about, "Oh, I'm going to make money," or "How can I get rich on this," or anything. My thoughts have always been, "How can I help the people?" So I took my little book and I found a list of almost every metaphysical church in the country, and I sent a free copy with an order form. And it was amazed how many churches actually ordered, a dozen or so, which was very nice. And then I noticed also where I was in the church bookstore that if a person picked up the book, they would buy it. But a lot of people didn't pick up the book because they didn't understand the title. So when I sold the 5,000, I immediately retitled it and added more things to it. And that little book has grown forever. And then the second book that I wrote, that was several years later, I was doing workshops at the time, and I had about 350 people on weekend workshops, and I did it all myself. I didn't know at the time I could have help. But we were getting rather good results. People were understanding the principles I was teaching, and if they would practice them, they would have good things, positive changes in their lives. So I thought to myself, if I could put this on paper, I could help more people. I know I could. So I took 6 months, I did a gamble, and I took 6 months off to make this workshop into a book. And I hadn't a clue what I was doing, not a clue. But I did know one thing, that I would not take it to a publisher, or the big boys, as I called them, because I figured they wouldn't let me say what I wanted to say. And I wanted to say this exactly as I wanted to say it. So I wrote the book. It took me 6 months. I printed it once again. And I was so disappointed when it arrived. I wanted this heart on the picture, and a rainbow heart. But the person who printed the book put the colors in the wrong order. And instead of having the red on the outside, it was dark purple. And it was like, to me, oh my God, it looked black. And I thought, oh no. And I couldn't redo it. It was already been printed and I paid for it. So I just, I used it. I had to make do with what I had, but it wasn't what I really wanted. And I was teaching workshops, and I remember that I used to put change and dollar bills in a bowl and have the books there, and people could just make change and buy the books. And in all the time that I did that, I only had one book taken from me. Only one. Everybody else made change, and if they didn't have enough, they'd leave a little extra. When life calls us, that's when we have to answer. People say, how did you do everything that you did? Well, I answered the telephone and opened the mail and did what was in front of me. And then life would give me something else to do and something else to do. And it's interesting because it's now been, I think, 25 years since I wrote the second book, You Can Heal Your Life. And in that period of time, that book alone has sold 40 million copies worldwide. And I've always felt that I didn't do anything to promote it at all. It's just life took over, and life said, this book is going to go to this country, and this book is going to go to this country, and go to this country. And it's gone many, many places all over the world. I even have 2 Chinese versions. There's the Chinese version of traditional China, and then there's the Chinese version of the Taiwan, which is the new China. You never know where life is going to take your work. And I think that it's important that you don't go into it to say, how much money can I make? Oh, I'm going to be rich. I've got to do this. Because books don't make you that rich. But what they do is open the world to you. And my thought has always been, how can I help the people? How can I help the people? And I think if you come from that point of view, it becomes a lot easier.
Welcome back, everybody. It's so amazing. I watched this video a little earlier today. I love watching Louise. It's like, oh my gosh, like, it's so good to get her inspiration and just her insight into everything. And she made so many great points that I hope like were sinking in for you all as you were listening. And one of the great points that I think she makes, and I really love emphasizing this at the live events, is she says the importance of saying, like, how may I serve the people? How can I help the people? And that doesn't matter if you're doing a self-improvement book, a business book, a fiction book, all of that. You're really doing it so you can help the reader in whatever way you're trying to do. And paying attention to the writing and the process of the writing is so important to make an impact into people's lives. Like, one of the reasons Louise decided to self-publish her book, You Can Heal Your Life, which she said, went on to sell 30 million. That was a little while ago. It's actually sold over 40 million copies. But is that she didn't want anyone to change it, because at the time in 1984 when she wrote that book, it was such a unique and different idea. Now so many of you probably think it as the beginner's guide to self-improvement, but in 1984 it had radical concepts that no one had really ever put in a book before. And she didn't want the big boys, as she called them, to change her words, any words. She wrote it exactly the way she taught it in the workshops that she had been teaching to hundreds of people. And she knew that the way that she was teaching it and the words that she used had a big impact on people's lives. And so that's why she kept it that way. Now, you can publish your book with a regular publisher and say, look, I don't want you to change much to it. Like Esther Hicks, we publish her books, the Abraham books, and she says, look, here's my book. I've channeled it. Please don't change anything. You can add a few commas and periods, but the overall concept came from Abraham, so we're not going to change it. But back in 1984, people weren't as open to those ideas as they are today. So she made those great points in there, and I just like to make sure that you guys notice that. And I want to thank you all for so many comments. I'm going to answer a couple questions I have here. Someone said, what is a good size for a nonfiction book? So the average size nonfiction book is about 70,000 words, It's about 256 pages, but it shouldn't probably be more than that, but it could for sure be less than that. Now, there are exceptions. We have books that are more than 70,000 words, but they're usually by established authors or they're reference-oriented books. So I would recommend keeping it 70,000 as the max, and then it could go between 50 and 70,000 is probably the sweet spot. There are super successful books that are like 40,000, like The Four Agreements. People don't have that. That's by Don Miguel Ruiz, and we sell that book here at Hay House for Amber Allen. But because people are so busy these days, so sometimes the shorter books catch on if they're real powerful. It's the power of the writing, the power of the book, the power of really making an impact on people's lives is the important thing, more than the size of the book. But I would keep it no more than 70,000 words, especially at the beginning as you get started with your writing. There's another question. Is it better to write the whole book or only a few chapters to send a proposal? And for a nonfiction book, you only need 1 or 2 or 3 sample chapters of the book, so you don't need to write the whole book. Almost all nonfiction books are purchased from publishers, and we're going to go into all this in the future master classes, that whole process. But I want to answer some questions to encourage you to do more questions. But you only need to do 2 or 3 chapters of the book, and then you do an outline and different things like that. It's a long conversation to talk about the whole proposal, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the future. But that's all you need. Almost all nonfiction books are bought by book proposals, not completed manuscripts. So you do not have to have the book done to find a traditional publisher. If you're writing fiction, you do have to have the whole book done to find a traditional publisher or an agent. So that's a little difference in there. And let's do one more. Someone says, the first thing I want to learn is, am I any good? And one of the ways to figure that out is you can have an editor read your works or read some chapters of your book. And there's many different places you can get editors or find editors. You want to get an experienced book editor. And you want to have them read the book and give you feedback. The best feedback usually doesn't come from like your family members, because they're going to tell you, wow, this is amazing. It's good to, or you can get feedback from peers, like, and places like that. Like you can get in writing groups, you can get editors to look at it. There's many different places to find out if you're good at it. But my experience is that everyone can be good at it, that you can have a writer help you write it if you just have the concepts. You can, I'm going to talk a lot about that in the next master class, the difference between a writer and an author. But everyone can get their message out that wants to get their message out. And one of the things that is important about that is just figuring out the whole creative process. And we had Deepak Chopra, who I'm sure most of you have heard. He's sold millions and millions of books over the years. And he was speaking at one of our writers' workshops in Australia. And he did an amazing job of just explaining the whole creative process. He has 9 steps to the creative process. And so we're going to play a video from Deepak to just get us in the creative process mode as we talk about writing our books.
Now, in the creative process, especially when you're writing a book on something like self-awareness or health, well-being, or whatever your topic might be, there are 9 steps to a creative process. The first step is you have to have a very clear vision of what your message is. So you can ask yourself, what is the basic message of my book? And if you remember, one of the best things you can do is you can practice heart awareness. Your heart has intelligence, just like your brain is, but your heart has, the intelligence of your heart is much more contextual, much more relational, much more holistic. It doesn't have a win-lose orientation, which we call intuitive intelligence. So you ask, you put your awareness here, and you say, what's my intended outcome? What's my fundamental message? And then you just stay with the question. You don't need to answer the question. Stay with the questions. And what will happen is you'll experience sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. Acronym SIFT, sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. Write down the sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts that you experience. So that's your intended outcome or intended vision or basic fundamental message. That's the first step. The second step is you do research around that. You know, what have other people said about these issues? So you gather information. And you are diligent in doing that. You don't want to say something exactly like somebody else has said it, but it helps for you to know what other people have done that. So gather as much information and stay with it for a while. Analyze the information. So again, intended outcome, information gathering. Third step, information analysis. Okay, this is the part where you struggle a little bit. This is hard work here. The first step, intended vision, you just ask the question. Second two steps, that's a little bit of good research. At least for me, I have to do it. As a doctor, I can't say things that other doctors will say he's being foolish, you know, or this doesn't have any legitimacy. Of course, I have to trust myself, but I also have to say what I'm saying is legitimate, okay? So those are the first three steps. Intended outcome, information gathering, information analysis. The fourth step is incubation. Incubation means you just let it all go. Okay. The best way to incubate for me is meditation. Okay, I don't even think about it. Okay, but there are other ways of incubating. Listening to music, yoga, dancing, breathing techniques, exercise. But there has to be a period of incubation where you totally let go. It's fourth step. And that period is one of uncertainty and detachment. The fifth step is the sudden quantum leap of insight. You suddenly have this aha experience. Every creative process has that aha. It's literally a quantum leap. Quantum leap means you have a new context, new meaning, new ideas that come from all the work you've done, and suddenly you realize they have nothing to do with the ideas you had before. That's why it's a leap, okay? Insight. What does insight mean? Inner vision, insight. If the insight comes from your soul, which it must if it is a really good insight, not from your mind, then that leads to inspiration. Inspiration, the word itself means to be in spirit, not motivation. Motivation is weak. Motivation is mental. So that's why when you're motivated, enthusiasm runs out very fast. You join the club to exercise, after 15 days you're not going there anymore. Okay. So motivation is mental, inspiration is spiritual. Inspiration, when it occurs, there's no going back. Okay, you feel enthusiastic. You know, it's very interesting, these words. Inspiration means to be in spirit, enthusiastic, on theos, to be in touch with God, to be one with God. Those are the root words. Okay, enthusiasm means to, to connect with God. Inspiration means to be in touch with spirit. So there's no going back once you're inspired. Then the next step is implementation. Implementation is now you start writing, and you'll see it's very joyful to do that when you're inspired. The next step is integration. Integration means you integrate it with all the other ideas you had when you started the vision. You integrate it. And finally, the last step is incarnation. Incarnation means death and resurrection. Death of the old paradigm, as Harry was saying, and resurrection, birth of a new paradigm. Okay, so for purposes of remembering, these are the 9 I's of creativity. Intended outcome, information gathering, information analysis, incubation, insight, inspiration, integration, incarnation. Make it a discipline though. Do it every day. Don't let even one day go without writing. And don't write because you want to get published. Okay? Write because you have something very important to say from the level of your soul. I don't know what else I can say to you. The elements of good storytelling I've just said. And remember what I started with. Every great story is a love story. Okay? Thank you very much.
Hey everybody, I'm back. Isn't it great to have Deepak here? I love this, bringing all my friends here at once to talk to you guys about writing, the creative process, and I have many more to come. You guys are going to learn so much in this webinar, and keep the comments. I love the comments. I just saw we have like over 300 different comments, and even the ones I don't get to right here, we're going to try to give answers in there, but I'm going to go through every single comment to get ready for the next webinar on Thursday. So please put them in there. Keep them coming. I love seeing it. I love hearing about the types of books and things like that, because that helps me address my talk right to you. So I love, love, love that. Part of going through your creative process is deciding like what kind of book you're going to write. So I mentioned before that, aiming for a niche audience is really a good idea. And I have a book here called What Your Clutter is Trying to Tell You. Uncover the Message in the Mess and Reclaim Your Life by Carrie Richardson. And this is a perfect example of a book aimed to a specific audience. And this book is written from her experience as a coach, helping people through clutter in their lives and her unique approach to that. Now, Carrie didn't have some huge audience for the book when she started with this idea. In fact, the book started from an idea that she did for us for the Hay House World Summit. She did a lesson for the World Summit all about clutter. And to be honest, Carrie was unknown to our audience. Her sister, Cheryl Richardson, is a best-selling author and has written a book with Louise Hay, but no one knew who Carrie was. But people loved that topic. In fact, that topic of the talk, which was the same, what is your clutter trying to tell you, became one of the top 10 talks in the Hay House World Summit. And from that, we said, hey, Carrie, can you make that into a book? People really resonate to that topic. So you might be a coach working with clients. You might be doctors working with people, psychologists. You might be just a person posting on Facebook, and notice that there's certain things that you talk about that really resonate with people that you happen to be an expert in, and other people keep asking you, can you tell us more about that? Those are things that you might consider making books out of. And so one of the questions people asked was, is 2018, 2019 a good time to do books? And I can tell you that the book business itself is doing better than it's ever done. Like literally, there's never been a better time to be an author than right now. The business itself, it doesn't grow like, it's not like Amazon growing 30% a year. The book business goes up slowly every single year for many, many years in a row. And it's a steady business. It's a great ongoing thing. People keep reading books. In fact, excuse me, I have to get a little drink. So my green tea there. So that you have to, it's a steady business, and it continues to grow, and it continues to be consistent. And that business itself that's the great thing about publishing. It's not like like Louise said in her thing, it isn't anything that maybe is going to make you rich just from the book itself, but the book leads to many different things. So like Carrie, she did this book, excuse me, live here. She did this book, and as soon as she did it, her practice took off. Like, she's so busy with individual clients that she had to start doing groups. She had to start doing other things, and it's all from the success of the book and the word of mouth of the book. And the way that the word of mouth of the book happens is you write an amazing, incredible book. Like, you put a lot of effort in the book, and that's what we're trying to get you set up with here today, is the concepts, the ideas of the different kind of books that you can write, and the background of some of the people that have been successful, which might be just like you. And another kind of book that is really popular today, and a book that many of you might be thinking of, is a memoir, or what we call a teaching memoir, where you tell your life story, you tell the story of what you've gone through, but then you give lessons to others about how that impacted you, and maybe help them on their journey. And we've done many, many of these books. In Louise's You Can Heal Your Life, she kind of makes a self-improvement book with different chapters that can change your life. And then the last chapter is all about her life and what she's gone through. And at the beginning of her career, her experience with having cancer and overcoming that cancer was one of the things a lot of people were interested in and came to her for, was the healing power of what she had to do. Because she applied it in her own life, she helped others heal from cancer as well, and help with she not only did a new diet, changed her thinking, she changed a lot of things in her life to overcome that, and then she helped other people do it as well. And that's the same kind of idea of a book we just released a few weeks ago that was a Wall Street Journal best-selling book called Chris Beat Cancer. And Chris Wark, he had cancer as well, and he overcame that cancer through his lifestyle and diet changes. And he's been helping people for the last 15 years overcome their cancer. And it just recently, as he realized, oh, maybe I should write a book to help even more people. And so we did that book. Lots of people love the book. It's having a major impact on people's lives. I was just talking to him this morning. He's so happy to have it out there, and all the amazing comments he's getting about how it's helping people. And that's his goal, is to help people. And that's something that you guys might be thinking about doing as well. And I'll be talking about I got all these props here to talk about, reminding me to tell you guys about these different kinds of books. So I'm going to answer a couple questions, and then we're going to move to another video. But one of the questions is it ethical to send your book to more than one agent at a time? And the answer is yes. You can send your book proposal or your book to as many agents as you want. Many people send them to 10, 15 different agents at a time. And the same is true with publishers. You can send them to a whole bunch of publishers at once too. You don't have to worry about sending them to one at a time to get rejections. And unfortunately, that's one of the parts in the publishing world, is there can be some rejections. Almost everyone has a story. Like Deepak Chopra, I'm going to be talking about his story in the third lesson of self-publishing his book and that sort of thing. But he has the story of being rejected a whole bunch of times. The book Chicken Soup for Your Soul got rejected like 30 times and ended up selling 300 million copies. J.K. Rowling's, the Harry Potter author, was rejected so many times, and it goes on and on and on. So don't worry about the rejection. There's no one that knows what success the book's gonna have. Put your effort into the book, and there'll be a place to get it out into the world. And we're gonna move along and talk a little bit more about getting your words together. And we're gonna hear from Marianne Williamson, and she's gonna talk about the power of words and the influence that some people have and with their words, and the history of why they're so powerful, and why words make a difference, and why books make a difference. So let's hear from Marianne.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am honored to be here and honor the part in you that wanted to come to this particular workshop and take your life and your work to a next place. And thank you to Reed and to Nancy and all of the people who at Hay House who have invited me to be here. Let's take a moment, shall we? Let's take a deep breath and close our eyes. And we see in the middle of our mind a little ball of golden light. And we watch this light as it begins to grow larger and larger. Until now it covers the entire inner vision of our mind. And we see for ourselves within this light a beautiful temple. And we see a garden that surrounds the temple and a body of water that flows through the garden. And here we are, for we have been drawn together by divine auspices. And we devote ourselves and the work that we do to that which is good and holy and true. We pray to be lifted up above and beyond the limited, sorrowful, desperate energies that would bind us to the past. May we be delivered to the freedom and the peace and the joy of new beginnings. And so it is. Amen. So the first thing I want to say is, if you're here because you want to write a book, that is probably not the strongest motivation. I would hope that you find within yourself the part of you that wants to say something. Because the part of you that wants to say something is in many ways a different part of your brain than the part that would want to write a book. And the reason I say that is because writing a book is the realm of form. And wanting to say something is the realm of content. Reed Tracy, his job has to do with the form of the book. Your job has to do in your book with the content of the book. There are some of you that probably are aspiring to be publishers. Some of you are about building platforms. But some of you are about the actual writing. So the first thing I want to talk about this morning is the process of the writing. And the process of the writer is a space to be protected. I don't mean protected physically. I mean protected psychically, protected psychologically, and protected emotionally. You know, there's something very holy about books. In the beginning was the Word. I'm looking around, by the way, and I'm seeing how many writers are here that I actually know. We all know instinctively and archetypally that there's something dark, even evil, about book burning. And that is because at a very instinctive, primal level, we're aware of the importance of words, the power of words to heal, and the power of words to harm. Now, one of my favorite books about writing, which I recommend to all of you who have not yet read it, is Letters to a Young Poet by René Rilke, R-I-L-K-E. I think it's one of the most beautiful treatises on the process of any artist. It's the young poet who wants to be a big famous man like Rilke, and he writes him letters, and Rilke actually responds. And one of the things that Rilke says in his letters to this young poet is, only write if you have to. Only write if you have to. You know, A Course in Miracles says that all of the children of God are special, and none of the children of God are special. We all have a unique function on the planet. Every person here has a distinct and unique contribution to make to the healing of the world. And none of us has a more special contribution to make to the healing of the world than does anyone else. That does not mean that everybody's contribution is to write a book. Now, the reason I say that is because something motivated you to be here. Something is calling you. But I would think that one of the most powerful uses that this seminar could be to you is for you to reach deep, deep down inside yourself and ask that question. Am I being called to say something? Am I truly being called to say something? Now, that might sound ridiculous, but I have met many people who felt called to write a book and didn't seem to really be called to say something. And we laugh at that, but there's the cheapening of your culture right there. Okay? Now, your soul does have a message to give to this planet, because everybody's soul has a message to give to this planet.
Marianne, I love, my favorite part of that video is just saying, say something, don't just write. That's amazing advice. Like, you really have to have an idea, a framework for what you want to get across in your book. So those of you that have already started your writing, like, it's an amazing idea to have an outline so you know where you're going with the book. You have a framework to start with, and look for things to put into that framework. Look for stories that you can tell that will put into that framework. You know, decide how you want to get that across to people. I'm going to answer a couple more questions here, so keep your questions coming. So we have, when is the best time of year to launch your book? And really, to be totally honest, every month of the year is a good time to launch your book. If you have like a gift book or a cookbook, maybe the fall, the gift giving time. If you have a diet book or a self-improvement book, a lot of people like to launch those in January or February, March, that time of the year. Fiction, a lot of people launch in the summer during the reading months. Business books are great, like all times of the year, really. Business is going all the time. Maybe the slower time is maybe July and August. People stay away from that time for the business books. A lot of people are on vacation then. So you just, to be completely honest, it makes not, we have books coming out all 12 months of the year. We try to aim them. The fall periods, the bigger books are released in the fall, so it's harder to get attention in the fall. Like starting right now, all the biggest books of the year are coming out. So that can be a tough time to get attention for your book because the very biggest authors are all coming out right now. Let's see, would like to know if I can use quotes that have been said to me during my lifetime. Absolutely, you can use quotes. You can use quotes from books. You can use quotes you've heard. The only exception is poetry. You have to be really careful when you use poems, song lyrics, or song titles. All of those you need to get permission. If you're just going to get one line out of a big book, then you're probably fine. You don't have to worry about it. Or one line from Louise Hay or Wayne Dyer or your favorite mentor, you're going to be okay with that. Your biggest problem is going to be if you use poetry, song lyrics, or song titles. So you have to be careful when you go there. What tips do you have for finding someone to illustrate your book? So that's, my wife writes children's books, and so she writes the words, and then she always finds illustrators for those books. And she always looks online. You can, almost every illustrator has a portfolio available for you online. Like you can Google illustrators, or there's agents that represent many different illustrators. All of it is available through the Magic Oracle Google. You can go on there. You're going to find so many choices. You can also, there's a website called 99designs.com. They're great to find illustrators. They're great to do book covers, that sort of thing. This book right here, launched by Jeff Walker, was done on 99designs.com, so that gives you an indication. This was a New York Times best-selling book, so it worked. But you can definitely find all the illustrators you need for your book. Like I said, my wife finds a different one for every single book that she's done, and she's done a lot of children's books, and they've all been found online. So that's a great resource for you to go there. And let's see, do you recommend writing about general ideas or how to do something, or is it better to include personal stories? So that's a perfect segue. I'm going to let Brendan Burchard answer that question. He's going to talk all about the process and framework of writing and the writing process and all the things you can learn about having a framework when you start. This is a great bit of information from Brendan. So watch this, and then I'll follow up on the other side.
My first paid engagement ever, the first time I ever got paid, was a huge, huge deal for me. Huge. I was in college, and I am a peer counselor at my college. I wanted to help people when I went back. And I was like, how do I help people? I enjoyed this peer mediation program. I learned how to be a peer mediator, you know, helping dorm kids, you know, get together, get along better. Professors deal with other professors, blah, blah, blah. So I'm helping out with this, and I got this couple in front of me. There's this girl and this boy, and they're in love. Except they've been fighting for like ever. And so they come into the peer mediation center for that. And so they get assigned to me, they sit down, and I'm not even in a relationship. But mediation's a process. And if you can understand the process, you can do anything. I understood the process. I didn't understand the topic, but I understood the process. You need to learn the writing process too. It doesn't matter if you know your topic yet. If you understand writing, you'll master the topic. The process is more important than the topic. So I know the process. And so what happens for me? Well, I do a good job with this couple, and I fix them, and they leave. Next day, get a phone call from the girl, and she says, Brendan, this is amazing. We had the most amazing sex last night. And I was like, I should be getting paid for this. What? Oh my gosh, you changed our life. We're so happy. Oh my gosh, could you come and talk to my sorority? I said, what do you mean? She says, well, I'm a president at a sorority. I said, well, what do you mean? And she tells me, she says, well, we have a budget, and you come over and you speak to the girls. And I'm terrified of public speaking, but I heard the magical word. No, budget. Budget. And I go, what do you mean? She says, well, after we have dinner on Monday nights, we have a speaker come and talk to us about life. And since you changed our life and relationships, we thought you could come and change our lives. I said, really? I said, okay, well, I don't really do that. She said, I know, but it's so great and everyone loves it. And we have $300. Now, I grew up where there's 4 of us kids. My mom and dad, hardworking. But we grew up in an economically depressed Irish mining town, no money. I mean, my parents working full time, never earned, I mean, just barely above getting by. And it was tough. I mean, if you ever saw pictures online of what when I talk about my house, like as a childhood, I mean, there was a big empty lot next door, a bunch of empty shanty abandoned apartments behind me, alcoholics everywhere. And it was a very tough place to grow up in. It was a town where if you had an argument, you punch people in the face. That's how you deal with arguments. That's just where I grew up. Tough place. It's also in Butte, Montana. Anyone Montanans in the room? My people. You know Butte? Yeah. You already knew. I saw Irish Mighty Touch. You knew. Yeah, Butte's a tough town, but everybody knows it and respects it, even though sometimes they call it Butt instead of Butte. It was a tough town. I remember one winter, our heat went out. And if you know Butte, it's where the Anaconda Hills roll, and this wind whips through and just murders you. I mean, it's like 30, 40 below wind chill is not uncommon. It's brutal, right? Well, when the heat goes out in your house, our heater broke, it's not an inconvenience, it's a dire frigging situation. Heat goes out, parents can't afford to fix the heater. So all these people are coming in, and you ever live in a community where people try to fix stuff, but they really suck at it? You know what I mean? It was like all these people who thought they're handymen really aren't, and it made the situation worse, and then something's flooding in the basement. Anyway, it was not a good situation, but my parents, having nothing, they decide, as my mom, she decides to go out, because now the house is freezing. 4 kids, no money, 20, 30 below zero. Dire situation. My mom goes out in the garage. She gets our sleeping bags and our camping tent. She sets up our tent in the living room, throws in our sleeping bags, as many blankets and parkas as she can. Eventually, we're kind of camping out in there. At some point, the electricity goes out because what they're doing downstairs with the heater. So now my mom is cooking on the Bunsen burners in the living room. And if you don't know what Bunsen burners are, there's those little canteens of gas and stuff that you take camping to heat up food. And yet the way they approached it, I remember us kids, we walked into school and we would like, where you sleep last night? And the other kids are like, I slept in my bed. We were like, we're camping. Because we didn't have anything, but my parents made it fun. So everyone said, Brendan, you're so lucky. I said, you know what? There is one thing I'm definitely lucky about. I lucked out on the parent train. I had 2 good parents. So good parents in the room, I love you, and do a good job with those kids. Give them everything you got. Can I get an amen on a Friday, ladies and gentlemen? Be good parents, be great parents. I lucked out. My parents, we had nothing, but they loved us, and they cheered us on. And it was a blessing. And yet, I didn't know much about anything. I didn't have a lot of exposure to many things. So when someone calls you and you came from poverty and someone says, I have $300 for one night and they don't want sex, you're like, well, if they'd ask, I don't know. I was in college. I don't know, Nick. I don't know what I would have done. But I'm going over. So I go over. So I spent all weekend with my flip chart like this from Office Max, okay? And it was one of those paperboard ones that stands up on a table by itself. I get ready, and I come up with the most important thing in teaching, a framework, okay? A framework. A framework is how you explain things. No framework, you can't train. I'll give you an example in a moment. So I come up with my framework, I draw it all out, I'm getting ready, and I'm motivated that moment for $300, okay? I go over there, but the motivation isn't deep, it's just about the money. And when the motivation isn't deep, bad stuff happens. I'm walking over, I'm super excited to go give my first talk and getting monies. I can't believe it, 300 monies. I'm walking over, and I get right behind, at the alley on the way to the sorority, and I'm like, oh, and I run into the alleyway, and I throw up. And I throw up, and I throw up. I'm so nervous. It's one of those throw up things that you don't even know where it's coming from. It's like out of my shoe. Where is this coming from? I'm pulling puke from the earth. I'm a vessel. I don't know what is happening. I'm throwing up so much. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Whoa, God, I got to be there. I don't want to be on time. I want my 300 monies. And I go over and I open it, knock on the door, and the girl answers the door, and I cover my mouth. I don't want her to smell. I'm like, hi, I'm Brendan. She's like, oh, okay, come on in. And I walk in, they introduce me to 3 or 4 other people. I put my hand, I don't want to smell it. And when you get in the room, she goes, you don't have to be shy. I'm like, oh, I stink. It's 2 different things. I hold my mouth, I've set up everything. And then, okay, I try to calm myself down, give my first paid talk, getting ready. And all the girls come in. They just had, like their movie night or whatever, it turned out. And they're all in their pajamas. And in one part of my life, I'm like, yes! Another part of me, I'm like, superbly insecure, like at a level I've never felt in my life. I want to throw up again. And I got 60 minutes for this $300. I'm sorry, it was 90 minutes for this $300. So I'm like, okay. So I start teaching, and everything I worked through the framework, and I'm just being so trying to get the words and trying to get everything right and trying not to throw up mostly. And I give the best of everything I got. It's done. Everything. I'm like, oh, $300. Okay. I get done. I look down. I'd only been speaking for 20 minutes. Oh, God. But like my parents, you just get resourceful. When you don't have it and you don't know it. And you always remember this. Your readers, your students have the stories. You don't need all of them. Here's how I learned that. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. And so I asked a question. I said, do any of you ladies have a situation in a relationship right now that you're just really struggling with, you can't resolve? A bunch of hands goes up. You don't have to raise your hand. She really did. So, sorry, I shouldn't laugh. Okay, so all these ladies raise their hand. I just pick a lady. I say, okay, tell me your story. And she stands up and she starts telling the story, and she's not sharing a whole lot. So, but I'm out of time, so I was like, tell me more. She keeps talking. I'm like, this is great. She's filling up so much air. So finally I go, well, you know what? I said, come on up here. And I pulled a chair up. And I sat the chair down. And I said, so describe what the big challenge. She talks, and then she gets done, and by the way, she's crying. She's bringing up things about her childhood, about her boyfriend, and all this stuff. I mean, it's just going on. And I'm just, okay, all right, I should pay her at maybe half. My little thing, she should get some of this money. But she's doing such a good job. But then she looks at me, and all the women all look at me for the answers. And I look at her, and I look at everyone else. I said, you guys know her well. Does anyone here have some advice for her? And man, oh yeah, they wanted to tell her what to do. And they talk to her, and they tell her, and I'm just facilitating. I never knew that was a thing. I'm just facilitating. Facilitating. One girl says something, big breakthrough happens for this girl. They say, oh, the girl jumps up, hugs her, she hugs her. I said, ladies, thank you so much for your time. This was transformational. And I'm done. And I go out of there. And I had thrown up, and it was a mess, and I had no idea what I was doing. But if you trust the readers, if you trust that other humans have stories, you're never going to run out of anything. Brendan, I'm running out of material. I don't know what to do. I'm going, what? Do you know how many, have you talked to anybody recently? There's like 1 million stories. There's so many people who have something to share. Your book doesn't just have to be your perspective on that topic. Ask a bunch of other people. Quote them. Share them. Ask them, use them as a case study. Like, part of the writing process isn't just you facing the blank page, fighting the screen by yourself. I told you, learning social. Success is social. Bring in other people's stories. You'll get through. It will help you when you hit those blocks. That's what I was using. I didn't know at the time, but it was a big changing day. Next day, I'm walking down the campus university, and they just had phones. You remember, like flip phones had just kind of come out, and like handheld flip phones, and it just come out, and I had one. It was like amazing because the dorm gave it to me. I was working at the dorm, and it rang, and I picked up. Hello, and it was one of the other sororities. She says, oh my gosh, everyone's talking about what you did with this group last night. And I'm thinking, I really got to pay her. And and they said, you know, could you come and talk to us? I said, yeah. I said, well, do you guys have, like, they had a budget for that. Do you have a budget? And she goes, I do. I said, great. I said, well, she says, well, how much do you charge? I said, $500. Why not? And they paid. And then another one paid, another one paid, another one paid, another one paid, and I was able to pay for grad school by just talking to people about relationships and life. And I was a young, dumb kid, but I, at least from my parents, had the humility of knowing I didn't actually have to have the answers. I knew the process of preparing. I knew the process of frameworks and how important that was. And by leveraging that, and then just trusting the audience, I could go. And that's what I learned.
Brendan, my man. Oh my gosh, he's the perfect illustration of the importance of stories. As you saw in his talk that he just gave, is like telling the story and illustrating the points. And that's a super important part. Like he mentions in there, you can tell client stories. They don't all have to be your own. That's super important. But the most important part is stories themselves. Like having stories in your book make it so much easier for people to read. Like so many people would remember the stories. Like at the end of this talk, you'll probably remember Brendan's story, you know, or one of the stories I'm telling you about the different authors or Louise's story. Like the stories to illustrate points is an important part of writing your book. To keep those stories, get those stories in there. They can be your stories, your client stories. It doesn't matter. One of the questions we have is, how do you know if your book should be nonfiction or memoir? And if it's a memoir, it's most likely nonfiction, so it's the same. It'll be a nonfiction memoir. If it is a memoir, a teaching memoir, a regular memoir, it would be classified as a memoir / nonfiction. If you can use your life story to write fiction when you make things up, but if it's the truth and it's nonfiction, then it doesn't matter if it's called a memoir or nonfiction. It's a similar category. It's just showing the memoir in there shows that you're telling your life story to teach your points. It's not just you giving lessons in there. But even if you write a straight nonfiction book, you need to add stories into that book. You need to add your stories or client stories into the book to really help make those points. It makes it so much more readable, and we need the book to be readable so people tell their friends about it. That's the number one way that you get your point across is getting people to read your book and tell someone else. So, and the other thing I want to get across when we're talking about memoir, I have another one here actually right now. It's called The Rise by Danette May, and this book is coming out tomorrow, so it's a brand new book, but it's another perfect example of a teaching memoir. She tells her life story, which is an amazing life story. At one point, she's left with her children, her husband leaves her, and she has like $47 left, and then she rebuilds her life at that point. It's like incredible. And as you read each chapter of the book, it starts when she's like 12 years old, and she's just had an unbelievable life. And then at the end, she has success, and she shares all the things she's gone through, and then teaches you at the end of each chapter, like maybe these are the things that you can apply in your life. But it's a very easy read of a book, and I'm not here to promote the book. I'm just showing you that that's what you want. You want the story of your life or the stories that you put in your book to teach the point that you're trying to get across. So our next speaker is Chris Carr, who we're going to do, and it's all about finding your voice. And she also talks about in there using stories from your family. And I've noticed there's a bunch of comments about, can I use family stories in there? And she talks about using a family story in this video. So watch this video, and we'll talk a little bit about that when you come back.
I'm going to wrap it up with this just one short story. All of us are scared, and there's reasons to be scared when you're a writer, especially when you're mining your own experiences, and sometimes it can feel like your skin is being ripped off. I would encourage you to just be with those feelings and keep working. Don't edit yourself as you go. Just let that first draft be everything. Let that first draft be the space where you can work this stuff out, where you get to know yourself, as I was saying. And don't worry about what other people think, even if they think it's a pile of crap. Here's the other thing. Some people, if you're writing about very personal topics, some people will be offended, and that's okay. Some family members might be offended, okay? And that is okay, as long as you are coming from a place of authenticity and speaking your truth, and knowing that no matter what happens, you stand behind those words. You stand behind those words, and you will not abandon those words. My first book caused a lot of thunder in my life. And there was some great thunder, and there was some stuff that was really tough. A family member stopped talking to me based on something that I wrote. And this family member is my birth father. And I'm adopted, so we didn't have a great relationship, but he couldn't handle the things that I was writing when I was writing about him never being a part of my life, but then coming in to talk about my will. And I thought, some women might like to know about this. And not in a way where I was trying to settle the score, because I changed his name, I changed the sex, I altered it enough, but the whole feeling was there, which is, look, you might not be ready for these things. You can take this at your own pace. Life is not over today. And if you don't want to make your will, you don't have to, girl. Not just yet. And unfortunately, my father passed 2 years ago, and we were never able to remedy that. And he was a politician, and he was in public service. And I'm always still sad because what I do is public service. So he was never able to see that. And if I was to look back and say, would I trade that one passage in Crazy Sexy Cancer Tips for a relationship with him? The answer would be no. Because we would have had a relationship a long time ago. And it just wasn't right for us this time around. And now we're able, hopefully, depending on what you all believe, but what I believe is, we're able to heal on a different level. I talk to him when I'm on my hikes. You wouldn't like what I'm going to write this time. Oh boy, you wouldn't like it. Right? How's it going? And when he passed, I took a long walk and I made peace with it. And I yelled and I screamed and I cried and I forgave, and hopefully I felt the forgiveness come to me. I share that with you because there's been wonderful things written about me. There's been terrible things written about me. There's somebody deep in my life who left because I stood behind my words. And at the end of the day, you can take away everything, but you can never take away my words. So I hope that leaves you with a sense of giving yourself permission to use your voice. It's already there. All you need to do is tap into it. And the chips will fall where they may, but you can still stand in your power. And I can't wait to read your books. Thank you. Thank you.
So I love Kris Carr. She's awesome. She's a great friend of mine. And I think she brings up a really, really important point that basically I said I've been doing this writer's workshop for 10 years. And all these clips you've seen are from live writer's workshops. Like in our writer's workshop course that we have 25 different authors in the course. So we have every single perspective you could ever imagine in there. But I love that she just talks about, like, when you put family members into your story, into your memoir, this question comes up every single workshop. They say, like, how can I tell the story of my family members without upsetting them? And Kris Carr gave you the answer, which is it's very difficult to do. Like she said, she changed the name, changed this, changed that. But the people that you don't want to read your book are going to be the very first people to read it. And if you're worried about them being offended, they're most likely going to be. So I just like to get that out there just so you know that that's what's going to happen. Like, we want your writing experience to be the best, and we're trying to motivate you to finish that book. We really, really want you to finish the book. We really want you to get it out there and help people change their lives, no matter what kind of book you're writing. And the other kind of book that you can write about, like, you can write a book about your life, but you can also write a book about your business life. Like this book, Launch by Jeff Walker, is really about his creation of product launch formula in his business and how he got started, and stories about his clients that were successful and things like that. So it's not always just about you and your life and the lessons you go. For those of you who have businesses and you want to expand your business, writing a book about it is going to help you. You might not be making big money on the book, quote unquote, but it can really change your business. So that's an important thing to consider as well when you're coming from that perspective. And I want to help you no matter what kind of book you're going to write. I want to help you succeed in getting people to read it, getting people to have a change. Like Louise said at the beginning, the whole reason we're doing this is to help people change their lives. The reason I'm standing here for an hour and a half helping you with your books is I want you to succeed. I want the people that read it, even if you do a book and 100 people read it and you get 10 letters of how it changed their life, you're going to be happy you did the book. I promise you, like taking the time, going through taking these tips you've heard today that can help you get started writing the book, that's what we want. And in the next video, we're going to go all through like how to write the better book, the importance of writing the book, some things that are going to help you succeed, some things that might take away from your success. And then again, I'm going to be doing lots of questions in that next section. I'm going to be applying all this so that you can see how to make a success. So I just want you to keep coming to these live things. It makes such a difference. We have like 500 comments already. And those of you that are watching this after the live part, please put your comments and questions too. Like I said, I'm going to go through and read all of these before I get into the next webinar on Thursday. So I'm going to answer a bunch of the questions from here and there as well. And then I'm going to help you create success with your writing. I promise you we're going to get this going. So I'm going to move into the psychology of writing. It's going to be Nick Ortner who wrote a book called The Tapping Solution. And he has some good points because I know so many of you are wondering, like, who am I to write the book? Or is this the right time to write the book? Some of you are afraid or overwhelmed in the whole writing process. And Nick helps us ease those pains and get ready to take the next step. So take your time and really absorb what Nick has to teach you.
So they offered me a very generous book advance. I run into my wife's office and say, they just offered me. I guess I'm writing a book. I mean, if they're dumb enough to pay me that much, I'll just write the book, you know. And this is extra fun to tell a story with all the protagonists in the audience. And, now they see everything that was happening in my brain. So that's all fine and good, but now I have a blank slate. Now I have, an empty Word document that needs 75,000 words. Anyone have any empty Word documents lying around there? Did you title it yet? Did you at least save as my book? It's on your desktop. Ready to go. Ready to go. Thinking about how people write, I'm always so blown away by our dear departed friend Wayne's writing technique. Anyone know how he wrote his books? Yellow notepad by hand. Crazy. My lefty handwriting, I would have submitted to Patty and she'd be like, sorry, can't read anything. So I'm staring and saying, okay, what am I going to say here? I didn't even have the title, The Tapping Solution. I had some other dumb title. And I was like, the title should really be The Tapping Solution. The movie's The Tapping Solution. The brand's The Tapping Solution. The title should be The Tapping Solution. And I'm just staring at a blank piece of paper. What do I have to say? And there's another moment where you can freeze up and walk away and say, I don't have this. I was talking to someone earlier who said, I have all these ideas. I have some chapters written and some notes. And one of the best things I think I did early on was hire a book coach. Now, I'll tell you what this book, I had a couple different people help me. I'll tell you what this book coach did. Her only job, really, and she did more, but really her only job was to sit down with me and come up with a schedule. The book is due on this date. You have to write 12 chapters, this many words. That means in 1 month, you need to write this first chapter. Now, it's the most obvious thing ever. You could all do it right now. Right? If we could say, okay, you want to have a book finished in 6 months, do the math, figure it out. But hiring her, for me, was amazing because it meant, okay, someone else is holding me accountable for it. Someone else is saying, hey, this is due. And you might want to consider, everyone's in different stages of the book process right now. Some of you have a book written. Some of you have a couple books written. Some of you have a couple ideas. Wherever you are, if you're looking to start or to finish something, go get outside help. Get someone else to hold you accountable. And it doesn't have to be expensive. I think I paid her, I don't know, it's like $45 or $50 an hour, but she didn't have to spend that much time on it because it was just like, did you write? It was really like, did you do your homework, Nick? Yes, you know. But sometimes that's what we need to move us forward. So I just started writing. And really, as I said earlier, I used tapping so often through the process. Because to me, that's, and it doesn't matter if you use tapping, if you meditate. I mean, how many of you meditate and then find that you're like full of inspiration? Right? And it's kind of like obvious, you know? It's like, really, it should be like, the Word document should not open up until you're like, have you meditated for 15 minutes? Because you're getting quiet. So whatever you use to get yourself in that centered space, the information is there. Like, you know it. You know what you want to say. You just have to unleash it. And if we think about the fight or flight response that I talked about earlier, whether you do tapping or meditation, you have to look at your life and say, am I activating this fight, flight, or freeze response? Because if I am, I'm either not going to get this book done, I'm going to get it done in a miserable way, or it's just not going to be the best of what I have. Imagine if we think about the fight or flight response. For millions of years, it was activated when we were in danger, right? So a tiger is chasing you, a bear is running after you. So what are you doing? You're running. There's a bear chasing me. And what happens when a bear is chasing you? The blood flows away from your forebrain, right, into your arms and legs. The blood flows away from your digestion into your arms and legs to fight, to flee. Now imagine, I want you to really think about this. There's a bear chasing you. You are running as fast as you can. And I come up running up next to you. You're like, that's that tapping guy. What the hell is he doing here? You know, just jogging along. And I'm like, hey, let's talk about your book. You know, I feel like you're really onto something in chapter 3. And I just want to know, like, what's next? It's like, you have a great outline, but tell me what's next. How would you react if I asked you that question while the bear was chasing you? I'd be like, a little help? Anybody? Can you help with this bear? There's no time to talk about my book. There's no time to talk about inspiration. There's no time to think these grandiose ideas. And the bottom line is that if a bear is chasing you on a daily basis, you're just not going to get the book done. It's just the reality. You're just not going to get it done. Or you're going to get it done, and you're going to suffer. Or you're going to get it done, and it's not your best work. So just, again, notice that in the weeks after this weekend, am I activating this response? Am I activating this within me? Am I staring at a screen and my heart is racing? Am I stressed out just thinking about this? Am I overwhelmed? You will likely walk away from this weekend, if you don't tune into how you feel and do some tapping along the way. Come Sunday at 5 o'clock, you're going to be like, I'm so overwhelmed. Who's left a workshop and been like, I'm so overwhelmed. I can't take this. Why? Because there's a lot of information. You have to quiet that overwhelm, because if you don't quiet that overwhelm, if you don't get quiet, you're just going to, Monday morning is going to roll around and you're going to say, there's too much. There's just too much to do. And that's another thing that we do psychologically. We think 75,000 words. I have to write all this. We stare at the blank screen and say, I have to write 75,000 words. That is miserable. That is exhausting. I'm never going to get it done. We do this in other aspects of our lives. We say, well, we want to lose 50 pounds. 50 pounds? Oh, my God. You know how much that is? How long is that going to take? We want to get in better shape. So what do we usually do? We'll say things like, well, I mean, our psychology is often, I want to create this change. I want to do this. I want to get in better shape, so let me sign up for a marathon tomorrow. Like, just get it all done tomorrow. Right? Might as well get in great shape all at once. I wish it worked that way, right? You just run one marathon, you're done. This is how we look at big projects. We just shoot way too far out in the future. And we don't look at what's next. What is the next step in front of us? How many of you have shot way too far out in the future and felt totally overwhelmed by everything that has to happen to make this? Well, if you don't watch your mind this weekend, it's going to get worse. because you're going to learn so much great information. So your job is to write it down, know that there's a time and a place for everything that you learn this weekend. And also know that you're all at different stages of the journey. And so you might learn something. I see this happen all the time too. Let's say Read tomorrow covers some social media stuff you can do for your book. And some of you will just freak out because you're like, oh my God, I don't even understand Facebook with my friends, and I got to do marketing on it. Some of you hear about this, that, and the other, and just, oh, this is too much. What's in front of you next? Pay attention to what he covers. He's a genius. He'll give you the best. And then if it's not the time for that, right then, set it aside. Set it aside and say, I know I can get to this when the time is right. My last piece on the writing journey, I hired the book coach to keep me on track, and then I hired an editor, the lovely Kelly Notaris, who's here in the front row. Yay, Kelly, round of applause for Kelly. Kelly and her team. And she was amazing, and this is the other thing too, when you're writing a book, it's like, it doesn't all have to be on you. Like, there's people who know better than you do on some stuff, who can guide you along the way, who can, like, this is why editors exist, you know? And they're available. I also had, lucky enough to have this be a published book where Patty was editing with me and Laura and the amazing team at Hay House. But even if you don't have a book publisher, I was talking to someone earlier, and she said she had these great ideas, had written a bunch of stuff, and it was like just putting it all together, and she was stuck. It's like, go hire an editor for 5 hours, right? Just go get an opinion. Go get some feedback. Go hire 5 editors for 1 hour, right? That's another strategy, which sometimes works, because you don't know if you're going to connect with the person and what you're going to learn from them. Get other outside opinions. And I think that's huge all the time. We can be, it makes me think of, you guys remember the movie Office Space? Right? So there's, in Office Space, there's the guy who gets hit by the truck. Like, he backs up, he gets hit by a truck, and he gets $1 million settlement. He's had this idea the whole time he keeps talking about, I'm going to do a mat where you jump to conclusions. And it's like the dumbest idea ever. I mean, literally, it was like, and then he's like, he got all this money, so he's like, here's the prototype. See, you jump to conclusion. It makes no sense. Well, sometimes we all have some ideas like that. Not that bad, but we all have some bad ideas, and that's okay. This is where getting some other outside opinions can be really great. Save you some time and energy. Get outside opinions, get multiple, and hopefully that can help guide you. So, write the book, amazing process with Patty at Hay House and the whole team, book cover design, like all those details they're not important right now. And I published it in the first week. It became a New York Times bestseller, which is really exciting. Right? Yay for that. It was on the list for the following 4 weeks. It's been translated into 30 languages now, which is, I think, I'll probably list like 5 things that are my favorite part of being an author. Translated in other languages is the coolest thing ever.
Hey everybody, welcome back. And I love Nick. One of my favorite thing about Nick's talk, he had so many incredible points in there, but I love make time and take time for your writing, like that's so important to not try to squeeze it in, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. It's okay to say, okay, I'm going to spend an hour, I'm going to meditate, write for an hour, and get back to doing your daily thing. If you write a page every day for a year, you'll have a book. And that might only take you an hour, or even if you set aside a silent 30 minutes, that might be enough to get the book done. But please take the time to get it done. So I promised you at the very beginning of this that we're going to be adding some extra things to the Facebook group, the Hay House Writers Studio. The link's right on the right here. And we have Mind Mapping by Deepak in the Facebook group right now. He's teaching you how to use mind mapping to develop your ideas. So if you're just getting started in the writing process and you need to develop those ideas and really figure out what to write about, how to write, go to the Facebook group, watch the video that we have in there from Deepak, all about mind mapping. It's an amazing video. It's under 10 minutes long. It'll really, really help you with that process. Also, I want to remind you that Thursday, I'm going to be doing the second masterclass in this How to Become a Successful Author masterclass series. I'm going to do the second one. It's called Number One Secret to Becoming a Successful Author. And who knows, I might even give you 2 secrets, but I'm going to take care of that on Thursday. It's going to be I can't wait until Thursday. I hope you all come. You all come with your questions, please. And if you're watching the replay of this, please leave your comments and questions down below because I'm definitely going to be looking at those ahead of time. Those of you that mentioned like questions about platform and all that, tune in to the next one. I might cover some of that there. And the big thing is we've just spent an hour and a half. And as Nick said, don't be overwhelmed. Take some things out of here and move forward. We want to keep you moving forward. We want to keep you coming to these webinars over and over. And I'm going to end with a couple questions here. I'm going to take a few more questions for you. One says, how do I protect my ideas as I send out my book proposal? And so this comes to a bigger question. People always ask, should I share the ideas in my book before the book is published? And the answer is yes, because it's really important to get your ideas out there to see if they resonate with people. See which ideas really people take hold and say, I want to learn more about that. Like, listen to what the people want. Give the people what they want, not what you think they want. So in other words, don't be stuck on your own idea that I need to teach this, this, and this when everyone's saying, can you teach me more of that? So get your ideas out there. Start sharing with people. There's a book here I have called The Year of Less by Kate Flanders. And this book is basically a compilation of all blogs that she wrote already. She shared all the information in the book ahead of time. And then she just took the blogs, helped create it into a book. It's a best-selling book. It was on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. And there's many, many books that have done that, taken blogs and created a book out of them. And people love the convenience of you taking it, fine-tuning it, make it easier to read. It's okay to share your information ahead of time. If you're doing a book proposal, publishers don't take your ideas. Agents don't take your ideas. If they love your idea, they're going to do the book with you. If they don't like your idea, they're not going to say, oh, that's a good idea, I have to go find someone to write it. Usually publishers don't write the books. They're out there looking for authors like all of you to write the books, to be the expert. They're involved in other parts of the process, which we're going to talk to in a webinar or 2 from now, but they're doing different things. And then another question is I've heard that authors barely make money with the book. Is that true? Authors get paid for hardcover books from a traditional publisher about 15% of the retail, between 10 and 15% of the retail price. For a paperback, between 7 and 10% of the retail price. I'm going to go into all the self-publishing and that sort of thing in a future webinar. I'll really go more in depth on the economics of it all, but most people who write books don't only write books for a living. There are exceptions to that, but most people have other income coming in. The exceptions are fiction authors. There's many fiction authors that their whole job are writing books. Most nonfiction authors, and there are some nonfiction authors that their whole job are writing books, but most business for sure. Let's see. Is there a way to trademark or copyright material prior to it being published as a book? So the answer to that is no. I mean, you should put on, like if you do an article or something like that, you can say copyright. You can say that it's copywritten. You producing the article makes it yours if it's original content, and you can say copyright, all rights reserved. But when you get the book content copyright is when the whole book is done and you submit it to the Library of Congress to get your copyright. For trademarks, you cannot trademark a book title. You can trademark a book series, but you cannot trademark a book title. So if you have a title, someone else could have the same title as you, unless it's a book series. So that's just a little tidbit of information there. And then I'll do one last question. It says, I have created an intuitive guidance deck. Am I best to release that first or my book first, or release both at the same time? And to me, I think it depends on how big your audience is already. And the size of your audience is another word in the publishing world you're going to hear in a couple more as we talk about these masterclasses, this word platform, which is basically just your direct connection to your audience. So deciding if you're going to do a book and card deck at the same time depends on the size of your platform or how big your audience is. If you're just getting started, I would recommend doing the book first and then building your audience with the book before doing the card deck. And the main reason for that is that producing card decks is more expensive. You have to print more of them at one time. Books you can print as little as 1 or 2 at a time. I'm going to go into that in the third masterclass. But the card decks, you have to literally print like 5,000 at a time. So you have to have an audience ready to buy the card deck before you produce it. So I hope that gives you a little indication of what to do. I'd have to ask more questions to determine if you should do them at the same time. But if you're just starting out, you're better off doing the book first, build your audience, then release the card deck. In the long run, the card decks can be a viable option for you, but at the beginning, I would start with the book. So again, good luck. Take your time, move forward, and I look forward to seeing you Thursday for the next masterclass. And anyone watching the recordings, please leave your comments down below. I'm definitely reading all the comments before the next class. Thank you for spending this time with me.